The final game room was unlike anything Jiwoo had seen. It was cavernous, lit by dim, flickering bulbs that barely illuminated the space. At the center was a massive mechanical contraption that looked like a cross between a clock tower and a guillotine. Chains dangled ominously, and the floor was segmented into platforms suspended over a deep, dark abyss. Jiwoo could hear faint, eerie whispers rising from below, as if the void itself was alive. The remaining participants, just 6 now, were led to individual platforms. Jiwoo's heart raced as she realized they were no longer working together. This was every person for themselves.
Welcome to the final game Clockwork Conundrum. This is a test of endurance, intellect and willpower. The rules are simple. Each of you will face a series of questions. Answer correctly, and your platform remains stable. Answer incorrectly, and the chains supporting your platform will loosen. Fall, and the void will claim you. The last person standing wins.
Jiwoo's hands trembled as she gripped the edge of her platform. She glanced at Minho, who stood 3 platforms away. His face was set in grim determination, but his eyes darted nervously toward her. There would be no alliances here. The first question appeared on a glowing screen in front of each participant. Jiwoo read it quickly. What is the sum of the angles in a triangle?
180 degrees.
She pressed the corresponding button. Her platform rumbled but held steady. She exhaled in relief. Around her, others were struggling. A man 2 platforms away hesitated too long, and a loud clang signaled the loosening of his chains. His platform tilted dangerously, and he screamed as he scrambled to keep his balance. He managed to stay upright, but the sound of his ragged breathing filled the room. The questions came faster, each more complex than the last. Jiwoo felt her mind fraying under the pressure. She answered instinctively, relying on fragments of knowledge from a life that felt like it belonged to someone else. She was dimly aware of the others, the clang of chains, the cries of panic, the silence as one by one they fell into the abyss. Finally, it was just her and Minho. She stared at him, her chest heaving with exertion. His platform was tilting slightly, one chain looser than the others. He looked at her, his expression unreadable. The final question appeared. What is the cost of survival? Jiwoo froze. The words seemed to mock her, to dig into the raw wounds of her soul. There was no right answer, she realized. This was a test of will. Her platform creaked ominously, and she looked at Minho. He met her gaze, and for a moment she saw the boy he used to be before this nightmare began.
Jiwoo!
I'm sorry. Before Jiwoo could react, he stepped off his platform. The chains gave way instantly, and he fell into the abyss. His scream echoed, then faded into silence. Her platform steadied, and the voice returned. Congratulations, participant 089! You are the winner! Jiwoo fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. The room blurred as the walls shifted, revealing a passage bathed in harsh white light. The haunting voice continued, devoid of any emotion. Proceed to claim your prize. Jiwoo staggered to her feet, her legs trembling. She glanced at the abyss where Minho had fallen, the emptiness a stark reminder of the price of her victory. Each step toward the exit felt heavier than the last, her mind screaming at her to turn back, to wake up from this nightmare. But there was no waking up. There was only forward. The passage led her to a new room, a sterile chamber devoid of the oppressive gloom of the previous arenas. At the center stood a table, and on it rested a black briefcase. Beside it was a contract, its pristine white paper almost glowing under the harsh lights. Jiwoo's breath hitched as she read the bolded words at the top. Acceptance of victory and transfer of debt. Her trembling hands picked up the pen placed neatly beside the contract. The fine print was a blur, her exhausted mind unable to process the legal jargon. The voice returned, its tone almost mocking now. Sign, and you will leave with your prize. Refuse, and the game continues. Continues, Jiwoo asked. Survival is a choice. Refusal to comply means forfeiting your victories and becoming the foundation of the next game. The implication hit her like a physical blow. Every guard, every masked figure she'd encountered, had they once been players, forced into servitude by the very game they had hoped to escape? Her knees buckled, and she clutched the edge of the table for support. Tears streamed down her face as she looked at the contract. She thought of Minho's sacrifice, the countless lives lost, the blood that now stained her soul. Could she live with herself if she walked away, knowing others would suffer as she had? Could she endure being a pawn in this monstrous cycle? The pen quivered in her hand. She hovered over the signature line, her mind racing. The voice, impatient, prodded her. Time is limited. Participant 089, make your decision. Jiwoo closed her eyes. In that moment, the faces of the fallen flashed before her. Innocent people turned into desperate animals, stripped of their humanity. She remembered Minho's last words, the quiet apology that had torn her heart apart. Jiwoo closed her eyes. In that moment, the faces of the fallen flashed before her. Innocent people turned into desperate animals, stripped of their humanity. She remembered Minho's last words, the quiet apology that had torn her heart apart. Her eyes snapped open. With a sudden surge of defiance, she flung the pen across the room. "No, I won't be part of this anymore." The room trembled and the voice faltered. "Non-compliance is unacceptable. Prepare for elimination." Jiwoo trembled. "If I'm going to die, it'll be on my terms, not yours." The lights flickered, the machinery groaning as if the game itself was recoiling from her defiance. A low rumble filled the air and the walls began to crack. Jiwoo ran, her instincts taking over. She didn't know where she was going, but anywhere was better than here. Behind her, the chamber collapsed, the game consuming itself in chaos. Jiwoo sprinted through the labyrinthine corridors, the screams of the fallen echoing in her ears. Just as her legs gave out, she saw it, a door, marked with a simple word, exit. She burst through, collapsing onto damp grass. The cool night air filled her lungs and she gasped, overwhelmed by the sensation of freedom. She looked up at the star-filled sky, her tears mixing with the dirt on her face. The compound behind her burned, its grotesque games reduced to ashes. Jiwoo didn't know if anyone would come for her, if the game's shadowy masterminds would let her escape. But for now, she was alive. And she would make sure no one ever had to play again. Like and subscribe for more thrilling horror content.